Alrighty guys, welcome back into the tutorial. I'm sorry for the abrupt intro for this one. I'm picking up right where my last recording cut out. So right now I'm working with a tool called a wood burner. You can find these at just about any hobby or craft store. You can also find them at Walmart. They're a pretty phenomenal little tool that it's a couple bucks worth of investing, and it's got multiple heads and tips to it. To start using it, you just want to make sure that you have a nice round tip on it and then plug it in. You're gonna have to flip the switch to power it on. Be super careful when you're working with it because you can very easily burn yourself and cause substantial harm to yourself. I've gotten burned multiple times using this because I'm stupid and I don't pay attention to what I'm working on. So be really careful around it. And if you're somebody who is sensitive to fumes or odors, make sure that you wear a mask or you have a fan set up behind you to blow the excess smoke off, because this will tend to smoke a lot when you're working on it. And if that is something that you have issues with, or you've got asthma or something like that, I highly recommend wearing a mask and using a fan to get it out of your face, because you gotta take care of your body, you know? You can't be inhaling fumes like this. You don't know what exactly this foam's made of or what it could do to you if you inhale them. I'm always careful with that. So you can see right now that what I'm doing is, after I traced out the silhouette of my shapes, I'm working on just sort of burning the entirety of the insides and lowering the foam by about 1 millimeter. It doesn't seem like it makes too much of a difference, but once the whole thing is worked on, you'll see that it creates a really cool effect of this 3-dimension, and it also adds a really unique texture to the foam. It's something that I picked up a while back, and I've loved doing that to work on some of my foam, especially when I work the 3mm. Which does bring up something I feel I should mention, is that when you're working with 3mm foam, you don't have to be too careful about how hard you press and how much foam you burn off. But with the 1mm, you need to be super duper careful because you can burn through and create holes in your foam. So just very lightly on the 1mm, but the 3, go to town, you know? It's thick enough, it can take a beating. I also changed tips here to a more flat spear-like tip to work on smoothing this piece out right here, because I do want it to be a bit more soft than the top piece, I guess you could say. The top piece I want to be really nice and aggressive like that, especially since that's the part where the feathers are going to stick out. And just going over the whole thing, making all the little adjustments, lowering the foam where I need to, and it all just adds up in the end. It's pretty cool. I've used a similar technique with this. Some of you may have seen my Renaissance Fair costume that I did last year. I'll go ahead and pop up a picture on screen for you guys so you can see it, just in case you're interested in checking out what it looked like. So yeah, this is the costume that I made for Ren Fair last year. My character is a professional demon hunter, and I made all my armor. The most iconic piece has to be my shoulder plate and, of course, my giant-ass sword. So as I'm working on it, I mean, there's lots of really cool stuff that I did with it. I thought it was pretty cool the way that I got the sword created, and people were always asking me, you know, oh, what did you do with your sword? How did you make it? You know, it looks so real, it looks so cool. Believe it or not, it's actually just foam board and a yoga mat. That's right, that entire thing was foam board and a yoga mat. It just goes to show you that you can really stretch your dollar if you have the creativity in mind and the drive to spend 16 hours the night before getting it all ready in a rushed finish because you're a procrastinator. Yay. I am terrible at procrastination. Oh my goodness. But I made the sort of flesh that wrapped around my sword out of the yoga mat, and I burned the edges of it, scored it up really good with a knife, and then melted the edges and painted it, and the end result ended up looking like this. It just had such a unique texture to it. It looked and felt like scaly skin, and then I stuck the fangs on top of it for the teeth, and oh, it turned out super cool, and I got lots of compliments on it, and tons of people wanted pictures. And the same thing with the shoulder plate. I mean, that's just a yoga mat and some air dry clay that I used to get a bone effect when I was working on it. If you guys would be interested in seeing more armor tutorials like that on how I made, you know, weapons and fabricate the armor and stuff like that, please comment, let me know. I'd absolutely love to be able to make something like that for you guys. I just need to hear some feedback. But enough rambling about my past works. Let's get back into the Gauntlet, shall we? Alrighty, so I'm still working on just burning up the foam here. There's a lot of little details that are all going to blend together. And when I move on to the different pieces here, especially with these little spines, I want to make sure that the edges are nice and smooth, just so that the customer doesn't like brush up against somebody and hurt them or get abrasions on the skin. I mean, when you make your hard cuts on the foam, it can be pretty painful if you rub up on somebody really hard, or of course if you try to use this armor as LARP or something and you go to punch somebody while wearing it. Yeah, it's gonna actually hurt a little bit. This is not super thin foam. This is meaty stuff when you're wearing the whole gauntlet, especially if you go for like an arm block. So definitely, you know, be careful when you're making something like this, that your edges are nice and smooth, you don't have any really sharp pieces sticking out. You don't want to hurt nobody. These are just for costume, I hope. As I'm just taking my time and I'm burning each piece of the foam here and getting the little designs etched into them, to pass the time while I'm working on that, I figure I'll tell you guys a little bit of a story. I was thinking about this beforehand to think, you know, what kind of a story would you guys be interested in hearing while working on armor? And I thought a cool story would be what happened to me when I was at Ren Fair last year for wearing that costume that I showed you for the very first time. So when I first arrived there, you have to get checked into the gates, and I always do the call thing where you purchase your ticket on Ticketfly, and then you just come in and they call your phone, you get your confirmation number, and then bada bing bada boom, you're inside. So I'm standing in line here, I'm all in costume, I've got my sword slung over my shoulder like that so I don't conk nobody in the head. And immediately as I walk up, all I'm hearing is, "Whoa, look at that sword! Whoa, look at that!" And people are just, they're gawking, there's small children there, and they're like, "Whoa!" I never get tired of hearing that sound. So I'm standing in line, you know, I'm getting my call done, I get my ticket set up, I go through the security checkpoint, and they check me. All I carry on me is a small bag so that I can carry some money and my phone, of course. And chapstick, because I get ridiculously quickly chapped lips out here, it's super dry. So I get checked in, you know, I'm walking around, I'm looking at the booths, I'm making sure that I'm super careful with that big sword when I go into someone's booth, because I don't want to knock something over and you break it, you buy it, because I am not wealthy, so I really can't afford to break and buy. So I'm super careful and just hold my sword, and people are like gawking, I can hear them in the background as I'm checking stuff out, and just enjoying myself, having a good old time. And then there was a guild that approached me. So these guys come walking up to me, and I think they were the Vikings Guild. I do not remember exactly. There was a lot of blue face paint, and my character does have blue markings on me as well, and they were all joking around saying, "Hey, you know, we were looking for women to kidnap, to take back to our lair and party and drink, and you seemed like a good soldier until we approached you." And then they looked my sword up and down, and I looked at the opportunity and went, alright, here we go, this is perfect. So I get into character mode. I grab my sword, I swing it around my head 3 times with one hand before doing a battle stance and just roaring in their faces. I mean, like, full-on battle cry. Rah! All 5 of these big burly men, I mean, these dudes had to be probably 200 pounds apiece. One was like 6'5", I swear to God, that dude was huge. All of them recoil back and hide behind their woman that they have. They have one woman with them who's wearing like a big frou-frou steampunk dress or something. And they all hide behind her, and they're like, "She's scary. We don't know about this. Are you sure this was a good idea?" I'm still in character mode, so I mount my sword back on my shoulder again, and I get into character and I say, "Thou thinkst thou can take me, I dareth challenge it." They kind of took a minute to consider it, like, is this maybe something we want to do? Before immediately turning around and running like cowards. Just seeing all these big burly Vikings take off running probably had to be one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I loved it. It was just so fantastic. Okay, So the next thing that I have to do in the gauntlets is, the way I've designed it, there's going to be these two little blue crystals that are actually going to be lit by LEDs eventually. And in order to make them, I'm using a type of stuff that I think it's designed for quilting. I picked it up from Hobby Lobby. It's almost completely clear, it's just a little bit opaque. And I'm using a blue Sharpie to kind of rough out the design and make the darkest part of the gemstones. Just sort of drawing it like you would draw a regular gem, you know. I'm putting the dark edges on there like that. And then I'm going to use some of these gel pens here to go in and etch the designs before smudging it and creating a cloudy effect. You can see how it's sort of working. It just creeps onto the edge of this material and it helps to create a really milky crystal look. It's just a matter of adding a bunch of different layers and getting it all put together. Switch into different gel pens. Just making little notations before smoothing them out with my finger and blending everything together. I was really starting to look like how they looked, so I went and grabbed the glow-in-the-dark nail polish that I have, and I'm putting this on the back of it for two reasons. One, it's going to create a nice luminescent glow even without them being powered. And it also helps to stabilize the back of the material and prep it for the next thing that I'm going to do, which is I'm taking a really fine point screwdriver, like a precision one, and I'm scratching little lightning bolt shaped markings all over this crystal to make it look like it's electrified. The whole concept for these gauntlets was storm themed. So I want it to look like lightning bolts, especially when the light starts to shine through that from the LEDs. It's really gonna look like these things have lightning shooting around inside them. This is one of those fun little techniques that you can pick up. It's just a matter of working on it. Alright, and now we move on to one of the important pieces. The tool that you see me using is a heat gun. It's also known as a heat tool for countries that are a little bit more iffy on guns. I think I got mine from Walmart when it was on sale. Oh, I don't recall how much I spent on it. I know it was probably around $30. So it is a rather costly investment, but in my opinion, it is more than worth it. Absolutely more than worth it. I highly recommend getting one. The whole point of using the heat tool is to collapse the molecular bonds inside the foam, and that makes it a lot stronger, and it also helps you to shape it into what you want. So by pressing it to my skin like this, you can see how it's starting to pick up the curve of my arm, as well as when I work on the handpiece, just using the heat to get it up nice and hot, and then the pressure. It is a little warm on your skin. You just have to be careful that you don't make it too hot, because otherwise it can hurt you and it can kind of burn your arm. So, you know, be mindful of that and try not to make it too hot, or give it a second to cool down a little bit before you press it to your skin, because you don't want to hurt yourself. This is costumery. You don't want to get hurt doing so. Now you can see when I lay these pieces together how they look. That's essentially the completed concept of this whole arm gauntlet, and personally I think it's pretty awesome looking so far. The textures, the way that they're all coming together like that, it looks really cool. It's just a matter of working with it and getting each piece all heated up with the gun so that it can collapse the little bonds and make the foam much stronger. The rest of it, I ended up losing the footage of me heat warping it, but it's just a good idea to go through every piece and heat warp it. And then the piece that I'm working on right now is actually a type of 4-way stretch fabric. I almost always put these on the back sides of my gauntlets because it is more comfortable on your skin rather than just having the raw foam rubbing up against you, and it helps to hide any imperfections that may be in the undersides of the foam. So I'm just tracing the silhouette here for the wrist and the hand. I'm not going to do it with the fingers because the fingers have to move freely, and I don't want to have the fabric create too much of an issue with them. It strongly depends on how comfortable the fabric is or how big around the customer's fingers are. I may end up coming back and fixing that, but I'm just going to put that aside right now so that I can glue the little details on here. and I'm using a type of glue called E6000, which is insanely toxic. You do not want to swallow this. Don't get it anywhere near your mouth, your nose. Keep it out of your body. If you're a first-time user and you're a little on the clumsy side, please wear gloves and wear a mask when you're doing this. I have a fan off screen that is blowing the odor out of my face, but if you do not have one or you're new to working with this material, please, please, please wear a mask. This stuff is seriously bad. You do not want it to interfere with your body. The next piece that I'm going to be working on is the little gemstone. I have to put it into the little wrist piece here, and I'm using just 3D puffy paint. It works super good because it's flexible, and I can smooth it out with my finger safely so that the gemstone sits in the way I want it to, and it doesn't obscure any of the gemstone itself from the outside. Make sure you wash your hands before you work on the next piece, which is to use wood glue as an adherent. And what that means is before you paint these, you do need to give the paint a surface to grab onto. And I've found that using wood glue or what's another one? Mod Podge works pretty good. Plasti Dip is another option. It all just depends, you know, what you feel most comfortable working with. I prefer Plasti Dip, but Plasti Dip is an aerosol can, so it runs anywhere between like $8 and $10 per can, and when it comes to doing one gauntlet, I usually use an entire can on one gauntlet, and I have 2 of these to do, and I just, even with the customer's budget, I could not afford to do that. So I went ahead and used the wood glue method, which works just as good, if not better. I mean, it adds stability, it makes it super duper strong, whereas the Plasti Dip makes it a bit more on the flexible side. So I may end up going to the wood glue method entirely just because it takes away that total flexibility and makes it much more stable. Just working on doing each piece here. I've got my brush going, covering the pieces completely. When it comes to doing this to your foam pieces, make sure that you only do it on the top side. Don't do it on the undersides because you do want to allow them to bend so that you can warp them onto the finger or the hand or the wrist. You know, your body bends, you're not flat. So just work on it and only put it on the top. Make sure that it gets into all the little grooves, and then just wait for it to dry as you keep going, because it is going to take anywhere between 1 and 2 hours for this to completely dry in order for you to work on the next part. And my cat is going absolutely crazy in the other room. I apologize if you can hear it. Just gonna finish up this last piece right here. And there we have it. So I do want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was a lot shorter than my last one. I'm hoping to make my videos much more short like this in the future so that you guys don't have to sit down for an entire hour and watch me work and listen to me ramble on and on and on, as I tend to do. So if you did enjoy the video, or you felt like you learned something new, or you were just intrigued by what I'm doing, please be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Facebook, there'll be a link in the description, as well as a link to my DeviantArt page if you'd like to check out more of my work. I have all kinds of artwork, I do all sorts of crafts, I'm obsessed with dragons, so it's a lot of dragon content. And comment below what you thought about the video. I'd love to hear back from you guys, and if you're working on a project like this, show me a picture of what you're doing. I'd love to see it. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful day and a beautiful life.